There you go.
How about that?
Official.
All right. So good morning. I will do introductions for Sean, our board chair, Sean Reynolds. So Sean Reynolds is to my left, the board chair and the natural resources supervisor for DEC Region 4. Patty McLaughlin is our office manager reporting for us. Andrew Curry is representing Town of Colony. Harvey Alexander is with us. Harvey is a citizen member, as is Nancy Pearson. Good morning, Nancy.
Good morning.
Don Safos representing the Town of Gilman, and John Russ, citizen. So good morning. We have minutes from June 20th. Does anybody have any comments on those minutes? Not, is there a motion?
I'll second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Do we have any comments from the public? I think we have Eileen. Are you there?
Good morning, I'm here.
We are. Eileen, is there anything you want to report on for the Friends?
Just a small update. Last night we had a meetup. We have people sign up through Meetup at 6 Mile Waterworks. It was food with friends, and that went really well. I guess we have our fundraising drive coming up soon, end of year fundraising drive. We'll be doing our traveling perspectives where we showcase the different photos that are taken at the Pine Bush at different venues in the area. And the only other thing is we have a couple of new board member prospects, which we're very excited about.
Great. Any questions for Eileen? Friends? Actually, I just want to recognize Eileen. I want to thank the Friends. We're using the Friends mugs. Everybody has a mug, coffee. Thank you, Friends, for donating mugs.
Thank you, Eileen.
Board meeting.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Eileen. Do we have any other members of the public that wish to comment? Hearing none. All right. Let's go into reports. Sean, do you have anything you wanted to report on?
Just wanted to report that I had an opportunity to attend the Northeast Midwest Prescribed Fire Management Conference at downtown last month. Pine Bush staff were the leads for that event. They did a terrific job. Neil Gifford was our MC for the day that I was there. I just want to congratulate the staff here on a job well done, and it was very well attended. Good opportunity for Pine Bush staff to network with other professionals, do the same kind of work they do.
Yeah, it was really good. Neil's not here. He's unable to attend, but I asked him to give kind of an update summary at the board meeting in December. There's some photos from the actual field trip. So it started on Monday and it ran through Thursday. Wednesday was an all-day field trip here at the Pine Bush, and every staff member here, everyone participated and helped even beforehand. So a big thanks to every staff member that participated. And Wendy Craney, our communications director, put together this document. Typically for workshops, sometimes you'll have a workbook to kind of keep track of things and take notes. So the idea came up of a storybook. So Wendy worked with the team, the 20-state team that came together here in Albany for this workshop and came to the Pine Bush. 217 attendees, but this is the storybook that everybody got. So I wanted to pass that around. With that, thank you, everyone.
Hey, Chris, I love the aerial, the photograph of everybody here. Do we have a pilot? Do we have a drone pilot here?
No, we have a roof, but we have a professional. we have a
Old school.
we have a professional photographer. We hired her for the 2 days. So Tuesday was the full day start of the conference. Monday was just some side workshops. Tuesday was the full workshop, start to finish. Wednesday was the field trip, so she took photos of both. So Neil can show you some of those. We broke into, how many groups? We had 10. We had 10 groups, team led throughout the preserve with over 200 people attending. We had a tent in the parking lot for lunch. Everybody came here on small buses from the Hilton. It was a 12 choreographed, large, complicated event that was pulled off really well.
It's great.
So it is great. We had the interim commissioner from DEC. Starting.
Yeah.
The interim commissioner from DEC, Sean Mahar, he gave opening remarks. So Sean is interim because Battle Sagos left the agency, so Sean is interim now. It was really good. All right, now stop. Anything else from board members?
We seem a little sparse here.
We are.
Do we have a quorum?
We do. We have 6.
Okay, we need 6 for that?
Yep. Majority.
And has Steve and some of those other ones been replaced yet, or?
No, Steve
That's
couldn't
one
attend.
reason why we're so sparse then?
No, Steve had a conflict. He couldn't come today. I can look and see. Um, for other participants, Jessica is here. Jessica's here on phone, and Pat Kern from the county.
Okay,
is
I
here.
don't see Jessica there, that's what that was.
That's just because all you can see is that block.
Yeah. Okay, so we have more people here than I thought. That's
Yeah.
good.
Yes, we do. So we have 8. And we should have 9 soon.
Okay.
Anything else, board members? Okay. So for me, let's see, I'll keep it short because I need to do the technical committee report and the Discovery Center grounds project update for y'all. I did thank the friends for the mugs. In your board packet here, we do an annual evaluation for the board. It's a confidential evaluation. As you know, I pester you to fill it out. It's in your board packet. It is after the update from the staff. So this is completed annually, and I have to submit it to the authority's budget office. So this was completed. It was completed in July. We usually get it done in June, but some folks were away for extended periods of time, so we got it done a little later. We just have to do it annually. So that's in your board packet. There's a number of things. Hi, Casey. Casey Farnsworth from State Parks just joined us. And I'd ask you to take a look at, I won't spend too much time going through the update here. There's a lot of stuff going on. Thank you, Patty, for working with staff to put this together. It looks really good. Every department, a lot of stuff, education, outreach, communications, science, fire, stewardship, lots of stuff going on. Take a look at it. We are up to 346 acres this year, I believe. Last time we tried to burn Adelina, it was our seasonal fire techs. 2 weeks ago, September 5th. We attempted, shut it down, it went too wet. September's tough. Fall burning's pretty difficult until we get a frost. But it's always good to get out and try. We had, if I remember, 32 people on that burn, a lot of partners, which is great.
I think that was the 16th of the season for us.
That's right. Yeah. So it's been a good year. And then some other things, I think it's also in your update. As far as outreach, we were invited, REI, I think folks may know, REI opened a retail store in Crossgate. We were invited to a private event on Thursday evening. We had a table there. We were only one of 2 agencies, 2 organizations that had tables. Sarah Riley was there, Franny was there. So it was nice to have a private event, and then they invited 300 people that came through that were private invitation. And then there's a tabling event Friday, Saturday, and Sunday outside with lots of different partners. And we're participating in that too. And I think I will leave it at that. Let me do the technical committee update for you. The only new project is in the town of Colony. It's 2871 Curry Road. It's a proposal for a 5,000 square foot office warehouse building on a little over an acre. It's on like a sliver of property. It's adjacent to protected preserve land, protected dedicated preserve land, and it's across the road from protected dedicated preserve land with occupied Blue asset. So in summary, the response from the technical committee is this might be an unlisted action or a type 1 under seeker. Please look into that, the planning department, and please consult with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the Department of Environmental Conservation to survey for endangered species, because if there's carnivores blues across the road, they may be on that property. So the applicant will want to make sure that they're not there, or if they are there. Okay, that's enough from Chris. Lisa, would you like to do the financial report?
get you sharing.
Oh, no, from New Jersey.
Yeah.
Should happen on Friday.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
Financial report will be 4 months for fiscal year, April through July. We'll begin with a statement of financial activity. On the revenue side, due to contributions around budget, we have a slight increase for a private donation of $170, but this is generally our trust account, which comes in quarterly. Government grants and contracts are at 97% of budget directly related to expenses alone, which came in slightly under budget. Mitigation fees are $6,000 higher than budget, and this is our landfill. So we budgeted 25, came out at 31. Lease revenue is pretty close to budget. We have a slight adjusting entry on 5/31 when our GMC lease ended. So we zeroed out both the lease receivable, which will stay on the balance sheet, and the liability. But this will come in very close, and we'll make an adjustment at year end for the new GASB 87 regulations that were passed. But you won't see that until 3/31. Let's see, other revenue is.
No, you keep going on,
Keep going?
you keep going. I will bring it back.
Other revenue is $13,000 higher than budget. This is both merchandise sales and interest income, and total revenue came in 39% of budget for July. Personnel and fringe, slightly under budget, $11,000 in benefits, $2,000 in salary, so very, very close. The benefits will fluctuate throughout the year. Just got our GASB report for the New York State retirement system, which was reflected at November financial, and that expense will be about $217,000. So that'll go up just a tad. Travel and training, under budget across departments, just not as much travel all the way through to this point of the year. Contractual, 95% of budget. This is reflected a little bit under in both departments, Discovery Center and Stewardship. These are preserved contracts, projects that are done throughout the year, placeholders, but it's still very close. Communications is 98% of budget, very close, a little bit under in our telecommunications. Occupancy, 95% of budget. This is our utilities for DEC and repairs and maintenance for the building. Again, a placeholder for projects. Utilities is a little bit under until the winter months. Supplies and equipment, slightly under budget. And other expenses are at 95% of budget. So total expenses came in at 97%. No large variances there. Overall, revenue and expenses came in very close to budget. $97,000 operating expenses. And if we look at capital expenditures, which is here because we're part of our parents' budget, even though we're not on the statement, are on budget, and this is the purchase of a vehicle for the reserve and security system. Operating cash surplus is $38,000. This includes fixed assets and our operating cash surplus from our statement. On the non-cash side, we have a new line item here. It's a non-cash land donation for $764,000 for 66 Rep Road, mitigation to the apartment complex. I'll let Chris go in more detail on that. So we have depreciation expense here, which is a non-cash expense of $87,000, and a net gain on investment, which we have a positive performance on portfolio of $278,000. Giving us a total change in net position, which is our gain loss on our audit. So our audit was produced at the end of July. This is what it would reflect: $1.05 million, and excess revenue over deficiencies and revenue over expenses, $92,000 positive. Again, this is the excess revenue in Paris, which includes. Any questions on that?
I can explain Rap Road. Sorry, everyone, I will struggle with Zoom. So this is, so on the non-cash and donation right here at the bottom, where it says $764,600. So that's the assessed value of the property that Pyramid Cross Gates provided through mitigation, the donation. So we're using the assessed value until we get the appraised value. I have an agreement, a proposal that we've accepted for an appraiser. He will be doing that appraisal between now and second week of October. So we also have a property that's coming to us from mitigation. We approved that acquisition. It's on Pine Lane, 0.8 of an acre in an area recommended for full protection. I talked to that appraiser 2 days ago. He's going to appraise that at the same time as this one. So we'll have those true appraised values. Then you'll see that number updated probably by.
What's the area in terms of, hectares or acres, doesn't matter?
This property, 66 Rapp Road is 6.9 acres. 28 Pine Lane is 0.78.
And Chris, historically, how do those two numbers compare to each other, assessed versus appraised? Do they wind up being around the same?
It depends. I mean, market, so we're appraising it because that's a recommendation of our auditors. Like, how do we book this? Should we use assessed value or appraised value? And they feel like fair market value, appraised value is more accurate. So that's why we're appraising them. They can fluctuate, but they're not usually very broad. Sometimes market will drive appraised value. In this area, particularly because they're undevelopable now, because one of them's landlocked, that we have access to protected land. And then the other one, since they're both provided through mitigation, and once they come to us through title, it becomes dedicated to the preserve, and so undedication makes it complicated.
Yeah, it seems like it's a relatively complicated
It is.
comparison.
It is. I mean, when I talked to the appraiser 2 days ago about the 0.78 acres, he said, this is difficult to appraise and find comparables. He said, but I will.
Yeah.
Because it's landlocked, difficult to develop.
And if we appraise it for a value, does that hurt the entity that may be giving it to us in terms of their tax benefits or anything like that?
No, because we don't provide, our appraisal isn't, we don't provide it to them.
Okay.
It's,
I was worried that
It's
we were
ours.
somehow putting a wet blanket on.
No.
Okay.
no, so when a property owner donates,
Yep.
they are responsible for doing their own appraisal.
Yep.
And then they use that to tax you.
Right.
Okay. Thanks, Lisa.
County. Okay, there you go. On the asset side, cash decreased a little over $1 million. We have not received payments from DEC for our first quarter, second quarter, and up to July, so pretty much January to July. But great news is they're on its way. We got news last week, so let's see her soon. Grants receivable increased again, a little over $1 million. This is the money owed from DEC for January through July. Again, great news, it should be here this week or next week. Accounts receivable, this is $31,000, this is money owed from landfill. We should be receiving that momentarily. Lease receivable are $0. This is the TNC lease that actually ended on 5/31, so I adjusted that out. Inventory remains the same, and prepaid expenses are $0. This is our 24, 25 expenses. And that's we zeroed out from 23 to 24. Investment expense, or investment income, sorry, $278,000. We have a gain in all 4 funds, which is great. Capital assets decreased $28,000. Decrease in depreciation of $87,000 with purchases of a vehicle and security cameras. How big is that? Land, here is the land that we were just talking about. We received the land donation, so it increased $760,000. So giving us an increased total assets of a little over $1 million, and that's due to increase in grants receivable. On to liabilities, accounts payable decrease, money that was accrued for last fiscal year that we reversed into this fiscal year. Deferred revenue remains the same with our national grid. New York pension liability remains the same. Again, I would be doing that GASB calculation and those journal entries in November, so this will change. Lease liability is now $0. This is due to the TNC lease pending, on 5/31. Again, we will have, that adjustment in March, working with the auditors firm in Gatsby, requirement. OPEB liability remains the same. I'm currently working on that report. It doesn't look like it's going to change much, a few $1,000s, and that will be booked in January as I work on that report from Milliman. So total liabilities decreased $43,000 due to these liabilities, decrease. Total net assets, capital assets and land increased $736,000. This is the donation of Raft Road, depreciation, expense, and the purchase of a vehicle and security cameras. Reserve assets remain the same. Unreserved assets increased $315,000, giving us an increase in total net assets of a little over $1 million, reflected in our operating gain of $97,000, gain on investment $278,000, land donation of $765,000, expenses of depreciation. On to investments. 3 months through July, we had an increase of $278,000. Increase in all 4 funds. 78,000 reserve funds, 6,500 in the recovery, 7,000 down at the endowment, 170,000 in the OPEB reserve fund of 23,000. Also, positive gains as of August 31st, we increased 391,000. So continued to have positive performance in the market. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa. Okay. Discovery Center grounds update. So I will do that. We can move into the resolution. So we have, back to last fall, we had then commissioners for Parks and DEC and their staff here for a presentation for the grounds project, which was well received. And we have been working diligently moving forward to try and get momentum with that project. So in the fall, Aaron and I met with folks at OGS Design and Construction to see if they would consider managing the project for us. You've heard this before. So we've been working on developing agreements between us and OGS to do this since March. There's a three-way agreement between the Commission, OGS, and the City of Albany because part of the accessible trail, which is phase A of the grounds project, is on the City of Albany's property. So the city had to be part of that agreement. And then there's an agreement between OGS and us to set up a cost center, basically a dedicated cost center where our funds stay in that cost center and they would expend it as they work on the project. Those are all signed except for the project Center 1, which requires both the signature from the controller and the attorney general. I'm assured that that will happen fairly soon. So probably fairly soon. But things are lining up for that. We were notified of an award from Senator Breslin in early August that we got what's called a local community assistance program grant for $500,000 for the project. That comes through DASNY. It's part of his Senate, his funding that he provides for constituents. We as an I recently met here twice with governor's office staff from the chamber that focus on environmental things, both in July and August. Staff from the Division of Budget who focused on the Environmental Protection Fund and the environment in the state. They were here. And then Sean and I most recently had a meeting yesterday with executive staff in DC to talk about the project specifically. And then 2 weeks ago, Assembly members Fahey, McDonald, and Steck wrote a letter to the governor requesting the funding from the state of New York to pursue the project. So it's moving along in a good direction. So we're waiting for a follow-up after that conversation we had yesterday. I'll hear probably from the DEC's chief of staff about next steps. We had talked about maybe there's an opportunity maybe to work with NYSERDA on the project, some of the sustainability opportunities we have here, like solar, vehicle chargers, things like that. So things are moving along. It's the right time to be meeting with these people because budgeting starts for the state of New York in late August, in earnest in September, and it's got to be done by December for the release by the governor in January, with the state address, and then the budget's released, and then the legislature starts working out. The goal of getting that budget done by April 6th. Any questions?
Do we have any sort of a contingency if things get held up in terms of funds?
Contingency as in, what do we do if we don't get any money?
Well, not so much get any money, that's probably gonna happen, but it's been known for months for the not to be released.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm feeling pretty good because, you know, we had some funding in place that we've had this rollover fund that we were gonna use for the accessible trail. Now we've got 500,000 from Senator Breslin for this grant. That will completely cover that trail. So that's good momentum. That trail is gonna take a while to design, do design documents, and get it constructed, so we can use that for momentum. I think one. Wes is always helpful. Does that answer your question?
As much as you can, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you have anything to add about the meeting.
I mean, it was a very positive meeting. There are a lot of good ideas that cropped the table.
Yeah.
So I feel like, you know, there's good things ahead. It always takes some time.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of competition. But Chris always tries to make the argument that now the competition is top. My job.
Chris,
Thanks.
I mean, from my perspective, the project is well needed. It'll give us some momentum. Yeah, we've been looking for it for a while. But I'd like to come over one day and just go through some of the details. We're going to spend an awful lot of money on the building. And I said this before, so I hope I'm not being too repetitive, but part of the project ought to be to attract people to come in. They ought to have a curiosity when they drive by. And it does sometimes seem to me that we're looking a little overgrown, we're looking a little closed, abandoned, whatever word you want to put on it. Maybe the word abandoned is too strong. Maybe it's just we're looking a little overgrown. And I'd like to understand how, at the end of this, we're going to look more inviting and bring more people in. We have to do that balance. Right?
That's come up in discussion that I've had with environmental staff.
Our staff has asked me, would they drive by, because we're right down the road. They'll frequently ask me, so, we're gonna cut the grass or what, you know? And so I go through this discussion and there's really good points. I understand the points about why we look the way we look. But I just want to come over and just better understand and see if there isn't a way to accomplish both. It seems like
I think there is. I mean, it is this kind of, you know, push-pull where you want to have our grounds showing the best of what the Pine Barrens is about. You know, but not everybody understands what we think should be portrayed.
Yep.
And the folks that I have talked with, they fully get it. They're thrilled with the native plantings that we have, but they also make the point that the average person driving by or coming in doesn't get that. So if you alter that a little bit, you get the people here and then they understand more. That's the whole point of the Discovery Center. And then you get them out into the preserve and then they're like, I get it.
Yeah. And we've got 3,000 plus acres
3,400.
to show that side.
Right.
It could take half of an acre to perhaps be more inviting for people. So
Yeah, I mean, we could probably do more of that even now. It's probably worth an internal conversation about that.
right.
But yeah, we'll set up time.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, John. Anything else? Okay. Let's see, let's move into the investment policy statement.
No problem.
I can pass this letter around if you want to see the letter to the governor from our local assembly members. Okay. So I'm going to give you some background on this. John, do you want to introduce this?
Yes, and I'm gonna turn it back to you to make sure you've been in the weeds, and I don't want to misspeak, but the audit committee meets on a quarterly basis, and we have some pretty animated conversations amongst us. We have 4 pools of money. We have a fiduciary responsibility to protect that money. Sort of sounds like the prior conversation.
Yeah.
We have a fiduciary responsibility to protect that principle, while at the same time, we don't want to miss too many opportunities to grow that principle. So we've had meetings about, a number of meetings recently, about how to achieve, how to balance. And we think, the audit committee thinks that we have a good recommendation for the full board. It will expose our principal to more equities. But it seems to be a reasonable exposure, and it will increase our investments over time. And we don't think it puts, for instance, our OPEB monies at risk, because there's been some modeling done looking at our exposure from retirements upcoming, the amount of money we have. And again, let's take a little exposure on the equity side, but let's make sure that we have enough for what we call reasonable worst case exposure to the equity market. I like to use the saying, reasonable worst case, not worst case. It's like engineering for a hurricane. You don't do that, right? You engineer for your 100-year storm. You don't engineer for a 500-year storm. So that's the philosophy behind it. Don, Nancy, Amy, Chris, Lisa. We've probably talked about this 5 times, and I think we're at a good point right now.
Yes, so the audit committee met in March, April, May, June, and most recently, last Friday in September. Going back and forth with Key Private Bank and one of their senior investment people that works on investment policy statements for organizations like ours or nonprofits. And after going back and forth, what's the result is what was provided in your board pack. So there's the updated investment policy statement. There's the tracked changes version, the red line version, which I won't bring up because it's confusing.
Yep.
But this is what to focus on. So this is the clean version, and I passed this around. This is a document I produced for the audit committee last Friday, which didn't make it in your board packet. But just kind of as a summary to help you understand what's going on between the 4 funds. So there's 4 funds. There's 2 endowments. There's the regular endowment and the Discovery Center endowment. There are the other post-employment benefits, the OPEB account. That's the one that you see the liability for every year from Lisa. And that's the fund that we need to use, will be used to provide benefits, health benefits, retirement for employees, those that are eligible. And then there's the reserve fund. Reserve fund is basically, as it says here, maintained to accommodate periodic fluctuation in cash flow requirements. And just 2 weeks ago, we had to go into that reserve account to transfer $500,000 out into the basic checking account for cash flow. Because as Lisa mentioned, we've been working with DEC, this whole state financial system has slowed things down. We haven't gotten funding since December. And that's what that reserve fund is for. So I guess since I'm talking about the reserve fund, on this document, you'll see reserve fund is unchanged. The committee said, given where we are with the markets, where things are with cash and fixed income, let's leave that alone. Let's not add any risk to that. So there's no change to that. But if you look at the other 3, so on this summary form, I just bulleted the 5 bullets at the top. So what are the major changes? Each asset class now has a strategic allocation in the former IPS, it just had a minimum and maximum. So they're internally with Key Private, the manager, the financial manager who's focusing on each account has a strategic allocation that they're working for. But now there's one on paper that they're focused. The benchmarks have been updated for all the asset classes and for all four funds. That's further here. So each asset class has a benchmark updated, and each fund has a benchmark with its weight. So those are updated based on the conversations with Key and internally with the audit committee. And then finally, so what you can see for the endowments, they've always been invested the same, and they continue to be, and OPEB. So that's where the changes are. So on this document I have here, it shows what it was, what the percentage was in cash, fixed income, and equities. What it was, what it's updated to between the minimum and maximum spread. I had a hard time putting this together in my head to try and make it concise. The bottom line is there's not much change in the endowments. The major change is the focus on strategic allocation, but as John said, there's now exposure to equities in OPEB. And that exposure, so that's where you see that right here in OPEB. So it was OPEB only invested in cash and fixed income. It's not producing enough income for the future of the account. So now equity has a strategic allocation of 40% equities with a minimum of 30 and no more than 50. As John said, working with Key, the Key wanted us to be a little more aggressive, and the audit committee members
With the thought being that in the future, we can come back and reevaluate these.
Absolutely. Yes, this can be, and if you remember, at the June meeting, we had to accept the investment policy statement. By under public authorities law, we have to review it and re-adopt it every year. So we adopted it the way it was because the changes weren't read. So we have to do that again in June, but if we want to do it before June, we can do that.
How are you balancing the growth versus dividends on the equities?
That's what Key does. That's what Key does.
Okay, so that's the manager's job, not ours.
Yeah,
Right.
that wasn't one of our
We don't
discussions.
have any kind of a, okay.
No, they just have to stay within that focus.
And at a certain point, that is, they are the professionals. So we need to be careful about being too smart, right?
Okay.
Right, folks?
Well, I think even, I'll speak for the committee, but I think members of the committee expressed that I might be more aggressive with my own investments, but as a fiduciary, having a fiduciary responsibility to this organization, what it's doing, be less so.
That's right.
I was just curious if we had another maximum, minimum, or something like that in there.
So that's kind of the summary of where we are with the IPS. Are there questions that the committee can answer or I can? Back up. Okay. Is there a motion for that?
I'll make a motion.
Jess, thank you.
I'll second.
John will second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, next up. And good morning, Jessica. Thank you for joining.
Thanks. I've been lurking.
Action item B is the election of officers, as we do every September. There's no change in where we are with the current slate. Casey has agreed to serve again as vice chair representing state parks. Mr. Sept representing the town of Gilman as secretary, and Mr. Bruss as representing himself as our treasurer. I'm still
Trying to do a good job doing that.
I'm still thrown off by losing Zoom and trying to find the finance. Is there a motion outside of those three individuals, if you're not allowed to public, that would like to make a motion on that?
I don't wanna do it, so moved.
Sorry, Harvey.
Second.
Bravo, Art.
Is there any discussion?
The ultimate real.
Exactly.
No, all right. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We have a multi-year contract here with GDI. GDI is the company that we've used for the last several years for janitorial services. We are pleased with them. We went out to bid. They were the low bidder, and we have a draft 3-year contract to work with them. So I just put some notes here to give you an escalation. So in 22-23, they were 49,710. In 23-24, they went down to 49,704. Because they're bid. This upcoming, the new contract starts at an increase of 6%, goes to 52,944, and then the following 2 years escalate by 3%. And again, they do a good job. Janitorial is probably one of the most difficult contracts to deal with in managing them. I will speak for both Blake, John, and Aaron. Are there any questions about that? Sorry. I didn't know that. So the project, so the full contract was in your board packet. The new contract will start November 1st, running through October 31 of 2027. Is there a motion for that? Andrew, thank you. For a second. Second. Harvey, is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
The final resolution we have here is we're updating our budget again. As we do often. Like to update budgets for good reasons, and this is a good reason. We're updating the budget because we were awarded a wildfire risk reduction grant to the USDA Forest Service for $150,000. We've gotten these in the past. We did not get one last year, so we're happy to get one this year. So the budget here basically shows under grant contracts $150,000 as revenue, and under contractual $150,000 going out under contracts. So that is for all habitat-free work. So it's mowing, silviculture, tree removal, invasive plant control, stumping, all that work that we do in preparation for fire. And Joel manages those contracts. Are there any questions? Did I get that right, Joel? Anything else? That's right.
We got it.
Okay. Well, any questions on that? No, thank you. We're thankful for both Tyler working on that with Neil and also Lisa, putting the quest together. Okay. Is there a motion for that? Move. Thank you. Second. Any questions? Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Great. Thank you. All right. Have a schedule. Now we're here for our presentation. I'm looking forward to this. Archaeological research in the preserve. Aaron, do you want to introduce our guest?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to introduce Professors Chris Wolf and Sean Rafferty. They'll be presenting to us today. And I'm just going to get their PowerPoint in here real quick.
Hi, I'm Chris. That's Sean.
I'm Sean, that's Chris.
We're a comedy duo. We are professors in the anthropology department at Albany. Archaeologists. We're two of the Northeast archaeologists. There's several more of our less important colleagues that work in Mesoamerica. We reached out to y'all because it would be a natural partnership, we thought, and in line with a lot of the work that Sean and I are already doing, which is originally it was going to be, we're interested in indigenous materials because that's our focus for both of us. But because of time and because of some new regulations and things, we didn't have enough time to talk to our indigenous partners enough to get them to look at these things and get them on board with it because it's the way we operate these days. But that's something for the future, and we can talk a little bit about our future plans and the Pine Bush and, how much y'all are gonna welcome those or not. But I'm just taking the lead a little bit today because I made the PowerPoint, not because I have any greater importance than Sean. In fact, he's the chair of our department, so I have to be good on this. But we decided to focus on the Helm site, something that came up in your CRM reports from Hartgen. They thought it was a German immigration household from the mid-19th century. They were right on the timing somewhat, and there's reasons for that, and we can get into. But they were a little bit wrong on who they were. They are actually English in origin, and we've traced their ancestry back all the way to like the Mayflower. So they've been here for a while. The Helm family is known more, and we've only traced one side of the family, so not the wife, but basically William Helm. And from Rhode Island here into why they ended up in the Pine Bush, we're still trying to figure out. So that's part of our question. And I just wanted to give you a little bit of a bird's eye view here. We took a drone out there. I have just a 30-second video or something that I can show you. It doesn't matter. There's a video flying down from, if you're, when you want to see it, we'll show you. But it's basically looking at this, which is this coming down from the site. You can see there's 3 areas where you're working. This is the main house, which at first we actually thought it was somewhere else, but we finally found the house in the reports. And we did some work on part of that house, cleared it out to kind of think it's going to be an interesting educational aspect for people who walk by the trail, which goes right through here and goes to the bridge. And then we had 2 units originally, and then a 4th kind of unit up here. So this is unit 1, unit 2. This is just for reference. Unit 1's here, unit 2's here, and then unit 4 is here. So that's the main thing. You want to add anything to this?
No, I mean, I will say that the actual staffing for the program is, aside from Chris and I, is an educational program. So we call it field school archaeology, the field discipline. You can learn all you want to do in the classroom, but you got to go out and actually get your hands dirty to learn if that's something you want to do. And there's the actual methods that we use. You got to spend time in the field learning how to do that. So we actually had a great crew, not a large crew, but quality over rules quantity. In this case, we had 4 students. You can see one of them there, I think. So this program is a training program for undergraduate students in the anthropology department interested in careers in archaeology and the cultural resource management field, kind of like exactly like Hartgen, who did the original survey for this. We also have a lot of, Chris and I do a lot of public outreach to really any local school or any organization that'll have us come in. In fact, just yesterday we were presenting over at the Tech Valley High School down in the down by the nanotech facility, and we're hoping to run an archaeology summer camp this summer. I talked to Aaron a little bit about that, and hopefully bring some interested high school students out there to actually do some work with it also. So there's the research work where we're actually learning about these people, what they were doing, why they were there, and so forth. But there's also a public outreach angle that is as important, if not more important, to actually train students and even high school students who may not go into a career in anthropology, but in order to make them better stewards of the archaeological record in collaboration with your own work that you're doing here on ecological preservation.
Yeah, and we'll get to the future plans near the end, because we're kind of excited about doing more research here, both on the academic side, but also bringing more students, which I think we have good plans to do. So just running through some of the things we've done, we created a grid out there to find all these methods, let the students actually choose some of where we were going to dig based on some of the intelligence we provided to them about the site as it was known at the time. And they selected pretty good. So the first one I'll go through is, oh.
Here's our video, finally. So going back in time 10 minutes, there's a little.
Yeah, I'm not gonna, but yeah, we just had drone, drones are becoming a bigger part of how we do things in archaeology, as they are everywhere else. But this is the area around the house before kind of shot here where it's really overgrown with things. We cleared off one unit in the corner here, so we could start to show the architecture. One of the things we're interested in is how the architecture was created and used during this time period. So, and this is a very obvious place. I guess there was people that were jumping their bikes through it and stuff like that. So we're hoping to fence it off and protect it a little bit more. But this is we'd like to actually clear this out and have it at a place, maybe even create some signage or something that says, here's the stuff to give, because the trail goes right by it. So it'd be really interesting to have people be able to stop and see this kind of glimpse at life during this period. So that was part of our focus. It was actually mostly me over there with the machete, like trying to get some of this mostly invasive stuff out of the house. Sean worked more with the students over here. This is unit 1. This is just kind of behind the house. So it would have been their backyard, which is a place where often trash gets thrown out in the back. The road is in the front yard, kind of just off the front yard, and then there's the backyard. So we often look in these places. We were looking for things like privy and what we would call a midden, which is just a fancy name for a trash heap, where people were throwing stuff out. So we can get an idea of the different things that these people had, how they were interacting with Albany. I've been losing my voice at the beginning of the semester, so I'm teaching a lot. My voice always goes. But looking at what we can see in terms of how they were consuming different products, but also the kinds of things. Trash is often very instrumental for us to understand people's way of life, the things that they were buying, the things they were using and making, and also who these people were at various points. Do you want to say something about this feature or anything?
So as we were excavating, we started hitting an alignment of stones that you can see coming up here, and that's the back of my head, I think. Along that, and one of our first thoughts was that maybe that was a structure associated with an outhouse or privy, which is actually, you're really excited to find those in archaeology, because a lot of times, you know, other than the obvious things one does in an outhouse, people would throw lots of garbage in it as well, and it's sealed in and intact, so you end up with this layered record of occupation at the house. Alas, that does not seem to be what was actually going on there. We think this is part of some kind of an exterior structure, possibly an addition to the house, or some kind of other. It's a little far away to be an addition, but some kind of some kind of auxiliary structure to the main house. Now, the downside of working with students is you got to go at an educational pace, right? You got to go, they're just learning how to do this, so you're not going to cover a whole lot of ground. So, you know, we have plans to go back there and explore this area a little more thoroughly.
And what year are we looking at?
So we're looking at, we actually do have historic maps. If I'm remembering the dates accurately, we have an 1854 map that does not have the house on it, and then an 1867 map that does. So it was somewhere in between there that gives us a pretty good idea of when the house was built, somewhere around the Civil War era, and more going by the types of artifacts that we're recovering, which, you know, obviously have dates associated with them. We're looking at an abandonment around the 1920s. Is that what you've been saying?
There's one of the other parts, you know, I'll show you some of the artifacts too, but one of the other units, that unit 2, that's actually inside the old barn area too. So that seems to be a place where people were, initially it was being used, and we got to, I think, the original occupation levels, which might be 1850s, 1860s. And we have some stuff that suggests that, but then we have things going all the way up into the 20th century. So people were probably using the barn after it was abandoned as just a place to push their stuff into, their trash. And it's also kind of a swampy, low-lying place, so it's not very attractive otherwise. It's just a place to put your trash. It's not a bad spot. This is just, I wanted to show this, so this is unit 2, so moving over into the barn area. It's a really interesting, you could, I mean, for those ecologically minded here, you can see the stratigraphy really well. This is all trash. This is getting into the earlier occupation levels and then getting to pre-occupation levels. And we didn't find any indigenous stuff, which is actually good because we had an agreement with groups that if we did, that we'd stop and we'd consult with them. But we never had to do that. I mean, in the future, hopefully we're going to be collaborating with them. But you can see these really nice layer cake of here's all the trash in the barn and here's the previous occupations. We even have, I think this is actually part of an old tractor, part of an old window from a tractor, lots of metal, which was the bane of our existence for the most part out there. Because we were almost digging through this corroded metal
Doing a
more
lot
than
of
dirt in
canning.
some cases.
And if I
We all
never
did have a
see,
kid.
Yeah. if I never see another canning jar lid, it'll be issues.
It was, yeah, clearly just things that people were throwing out in the back. Things like some of these, and Sean, I'm not gonna talk about more. Here's Sean telling them what we're doing, but this is basically inside the barn. The barn wall is actually right here and goes around back there. Lots of ceramics though, lots of glass. Here's that crappy metal that we found a lot. And here's Sean's favorite, canning jar lid with milk glass inside.
Yeah, I mean, an intact one with a nice jar sealer in there, that's great. I mean, for historic archaeology, for the archaeology of the post-contact era, sort of, it's all great, but the two types of artifacts that we can extract the most information from, number one is ceramic, right? So ceramic, there's decorations on them. By looking at the amount of decoration, you can tell roughly how expensive the plate was. By looking, are they purchasing individual plates or are they purchasing matched sets of plates? You can get an idea about where their economic position is. And then also by tracking both the decoration, but also you see this one here has a maker's mark on it. Oops, what have I done? I've enraged it. Chris,
I told you not to do that.
But the ceramics, that again, you asked about dating, so I can give you a very wide range. We can nail that down a little more closely by looking at what we call diagnostic artifacts for a certain time period.
Glass is also very good for that. And there's, there used to be glassworks in here too.
Yeah.
But we don't have it. This is postdates a lot of that. But I have a master's student that's going to be looking at just the glass from this side. It's her master's project. So we'll have a lot more information about that.
Yeah, that's
She's from
another-
Corning, so she's, glass is in her DNA.
Big glass fan, yeah. I know a lot less about glass, but one of the great things about our job is that we mentor graduate students who are looking to go on for advanced work in a postgraduate setting. And we have a few undergraduates who are working on various kinds of independent study classes. In fact, we're going to be in the lab for the rest of today working with students on processing the material from this collection. But we also, there's a lot, yeah. Because everything that comes out of the field's got to get cleaned and then rebagged and identified, cataloged, and then we have to actually start building an interpretation. So for every hour we spend in the field, there's probably 5 hours that we spend in a lab or in front of a computer. But there's also a lot of other, we're both pre-contact archaeologists by preference and training, but you do get a great diversity of artifacts in a post-contact setting just because, we make more stuff, than indigenous cultures did. And there's a lot of kind of interesting stuff coming out here. Here we have a selection of artifacts.
And we have some metal knife, seemingly like a steak knife or something. A sleigh bell, which is interesting, maybe for one of there does seem to be probably some domesticated, it's cattle or something. There's some bones. We have various animal bones, or there is a cattle bone within it. I'm guessing probably dairy cow, because it's not really a good place to have a range for meat for beef cattle. So probably, and thinking about how they might have been interacting with the market in Albany, dairy makes the most sense. Maybe just having a couple or for personal consumption. And then this is a pipe mouthpiece. When we did find some other pieces of the pipe, so sort of more of the other aspects of the pipe, but this is the place that was for the mouthpiece of it. What did we think of this? timeframe was for that, remember?
Post Kale and Pipes, so we're talking late 19th, early 20th century. It's kind of
Right around the turn of the century.
plastic.
So these are just kind of a selection of some of the cooler things we found. We found a key to, we're still trying to find the lock of how we can unlock ancient
Not a
evil
real
somewhere
one.
here. But skeleton key, we don't know where to, when we found this, we're like, what, why is this a gun? It's a toy gun. It's a very specific type of toy gun too, a Colt. Can't really remember what
It's a toy version of an early 20th century Colt 25 caliber pocket pistol.
Yeah.
It's very accurate too, right? Nowadays, they go through pains to make sure a toy gun looks like a toy gun. No, they had no concern about that at this
And
point.
the Helm family had 3 sons, and there were other kids that lived nearby too. So we found actually lots of different aspects of toys, which often children are invisible in the archaeological record because what they use often are things that are perishable. They don't last very long in the record, but having metal objects of toys, toy plane and other kinds of toy trucks and stuff, we found pieces of them. So we have this interesting archaeology of children here, which is that's a kind of a fun part that we weren't really expecting too much on. This is one of the more interesting pieces that we found near Unit 2 in the barn. We found this, we're like, what is this? It looks somewhat military oriented or something. It took a lot of searching to find something. There seemed to be something missing, and we came across a picture of this. So the eagle is missing, but a lot of the rest of it's here. Do we have any Elks Lodge members here? This is actually a medallion from the original Elks Lodge in New York City. Elks Lodge #1, which I've learned more about the Elks than I've ever thought I'd cared to know now. They started out as a theater group by this guy named Charles Vivian. He was an actor, and they were like anybody know this history?
Yeah.
They were an acting group, and they would have meetings, and they're called the Jolly Forks originally. Sounds like a fun group. But then one of the members died, and they wanted to try to help the widow. And so they started to do like benefits to raise money from them. And they thought, hey, this is a good idea. We can start to do other beneficial things. And then in 1868, when that happened in 1871, they got a charter for the first one. And this medallion was probably made shortly thereafter, so early 1870. And then it became the Benevolent Protective Order of the Elks, right? Called. This might actually have some really interesting historical value. I'm going to try to reach out to because this place is still existed, the first Elks Lodge in New York City. They have a heritage room. Obviously, all of these materials, and we'll talk about where these materials are going to end up ultimately with y'all, but this might be something that would be really interesting to them to have this connection to that. And we're also hoping that we can find maybe somebody in this area that was on the roll of their members, so we can maybe tie this to an actual individual, which is a very rare thing for us to be able to do it. We usually look at populations or group scale, so to find evidence of an individual is interesting thing.
I mean, just one of the things, of the many things that we both love about archaeology is that there are these kinds of random discoveries that you just can't predict or plan for, and they lead you in very interesting places, right? So there's always a surprise, in even the most, banal of sites.
So this is what we'll be looking like this afternoon. We have a growing group of students, not just people who were out in the field with us, like these students were, but others that are starting to volunteer with us and are getting interested in this work. Like I said, we have a master's student working on the glass. We have lots of different colored glass, really decorative glasses, lots of whiskey bottles. That some of them are Canada during Prohibition, which is kind of an interesting story. It was like, as you all probably know, the Pine Bush is a place where a lot of people were seeking refuge and quiet for sometimes illegal activities and stuff out there, which is interesting to us. And there's people we're interested in learning more about that are looking at that. Weird little figurines. This is part of a drone, porcelain figurine. We think some of these we might be able to match, but we just haven't had time to look to try to figure out where these different figurines come from. But you can see just a huge variety of stuff that we're finding in the lab. So I know you guys have probably some questions, but also, just to be respectful of your time. You're all welcome, by the way, if you contact us, you want to come by the lab and look at some of these things in person, we're happy to always host people over there. It's not too far down the road. With your permission, of course, all of this needs to be with your permission. We hope to expand, have another film school. We had it's pretty positive this year with very little lead up to it, so we didn't have a lot of time to advertise. We'll probably have a bigger group, open up some more space. Like Sean was saying, have high school students with us at least for a week to have a field camp, which there's some funding that we're going to try to get. But beyond, so the education is utmost importance, right? Beyond that, we have plans that we're actually working on a current grant that looks at human environment interaction with this really unique and important environment that we hope to partner with on some of the people that are already here on look at the ecological side of things, because this history of people living here is something that we focused on more is human environment interactions, pre-contact interactions with the environment. But we're interested in trying to find a grant. Probably we're going to apply to NSF for this funding to do a multi-year project with your permission in the Pine Bush that we can involve students and bring our own funding and other things that will create some really good collaborative interdisciplinary work. This is our hopeful goal if people are on board with that. So it's not a one-time thing. In other words, we want to try to, we're going to be publishing all the work that we're doing with this stuff now. But we have ideas that we think are actually going to be really important and probably something that will, NSF will like to see too, that will involve indigenous partnerships and things like that as well. And we already have those relationships with them. And
I mean, not really. You line it up pretty well. I mean, you've got a unique environment. You've got a record of human and natural interactions going back like 10,000 years. We're really just scratching the surface at this point, and what Chris and I have been trying to do is just build relationships with various stakeholders in this property to try to see that we can tell the story of both nature and humans together in this area, and aid in public outreach about the Pine Bush itself, about archaeology in general, and about the unique archaeological history in this one area. Any questions?
It might have been discussed before. How was the site? How did you guys find this? How was this found?
yeah, it was found, I think they were looking at, I don't know the reason for the contract, actually.
Wasn't it for the invasive
trail?
species, or was it for trail construction?
It's for all of our habitat work. Yeah. Because Joel worked with Parkin on it. So any of the, you can explain, Joel.
Yeah, but I mean, they knew about it before Parkin.
Yeah.
Did the work for us. So I'm
Yeah,
not exactly sure
The helm
when that was first
was
identified.
somehow known, and I don't know. Do you know?
It is on the maps.
Yeah.
Mark the town on the maps.
Yeah, there was like an initial assessment that was done because there are these different areas
Yeah.
that they.
And there are several foundations in that area. There's the Helm site. Chris mentioned that for a while we were a little confused about which site we were actually looking at. There's another foundation south and east of the Helm site for the looking at the historic map. It looks like it's the Wands property.
It's like right over here.
Yeah,
Here's the house, and there's another one across the road.
that's its own story, you know. I mean, it was Mrs. Wands. Usually on a historic map, it's always going to be like a male property owner, right? So it implies that she's living on her own. We know that she's got like a bunch of kids and stuff living there. So there's this whole kind of abandoned neighborhood. A road used to cut right across that property, connecting what is now 155 to what is now Route
The
20.
road runs right,
Yeah.
run right through here and it goes up.
that way. So, you know, there's lots of interesting, I mean, every one of those sites is a human story that's worth exploring in some detail.
But it was through cultural resources.
Yeah.
That's the report that we first read.
That's what brought it to our attention was the Harkin report. We were looking at what do we know is already there that we could go back and find and do a more detailed study on. And then in collaboration with the Stockbridge Muncie, it was agreed that we would look at a post-contact site. And that seemed to be the most prominent site on the landscape that was reasonably easy to access and was guaranteed to have something to discover.
It was really nice to access with just the oats being climbed out there. We could just park on 155 and walk over.
Yeah, and also, I mean, you know, pragmatics, I mean, you're just down the road from the university. It's a quick walk to get in. Digging in sand, super nice, taking gravel and silt. So
Sean usually works farther afield out in the county and places like that. I usually work in subarctic and Arctic, so I'm to have something I can just drive to every day, and that was really pleasant. I don't have to worry about polar bears or anything.
Just for context, board members don't know, this is the area right down here on 155 that we just recently cleared. So if you're going south on the right-hand side, looking west, that open area, they cleared on the east side. That's where BBL built a new building. So we get a lot of controversy about that clearing. You can see the clearing under where it says future plans, and the site is right there. That's how close it is.
Yeah, the bridge, the what is it, Kill, I don't know. It goes right back here, so the bridge is just right here. That's where we had lunch every day, sat on that bridge and in the shade, because it was hot this summer. And you know, like the Red Bull factory and stuff. It's right back over here.
Not a question, but as somebody who spent almost 40 years trying to get students out where they can do field work for both professional and just people who are going to be interested for the rest of their life, I don't think you can overemphasize the importance of having something that is close enough that you can actually bring the students there over a series of times on there. I mean, that's just incredibly important.
Yeah, I'm really surprised.
Super important.
I'm really surprised there wasn't already kind of established relationship, because it's a natural relationship with you all, and you just have us down the road. And so I was surprised. I mean, there's been some significant archaeology done there, but nothing that was like, here's a research project that would bring students to resolve through excursions.
Like I said, I did that for almost 40 years for ecology, and it's just that's just so super.
Yeah, even in a class, we could just pile in and come down and do the class.
Yeah, I think it's really important that we're branching out. We focused a lot in the last 30+ years on research and monitoring of the abiotic and the biotic environment, right? It's kind of what we do, because it's all about the fish, mice, for the world better. But it's also about people, you know, and that's what our law says. And to learn more about the cultural aspect of history, I think it's really, really cool.
Yeah, we're at your service too. And so it's convenient for us, but we're always looking for ways to get our students. We have tons of master students and projects. There's a natural relationship here. And even with our initial contacts with people we've been working with, the Stockbridge Muncie Weekend Band, and we'll probably reach out to, you know, some of our Haudenosaunee people as well. Their interest in this place is in line with like the fire stuff. It's like, how did the indigenous people deal with this? How were they setting fires? Were they do? We assume they were, because they have a long history of doing similar things in this area. But it's one of the things we can work with them, because they're really interested in how their ancestors were interacting with this environment. So there's some interesting things there.
Yeah, I'm just curious about sort of the interaction between the historic site and the trail network and recreation use. I'm curious that it's right next to a trail already, but sort of what are your thoughts on balancing sort of,
you know,
showing people something that we want to protect?
That's always complicated, right? Because like you want to engage the public in what you're doing. There's a great deal of public interest in archaeology in general. Although we have a lot of people just kind of walk right by us and not pay any attention to what we're doing whatsoever. That said, though, you know, you also have to, preserve the natural and historic resources that you're dealing with. It's been my impression that most people will do the right thing. And, you know, like our worst case scenario is you want to hear horror stories of people getting in there with shovels trying to find bottles they can sell on eBay and stuff. my experience there has been education is usually, the best cure for ignorant behavior, and to try to explain as much as possible. Chris had talked about signage and so forth, about what exactly it is there, why it's important, and why it needs to be preserved as well.
And we would be happy to create some educational information that can be here. So if people are going out on the trails and looking at things, they know that they're not supposed to pick things up. Or at least they supposed to know that. I mean, the other thing about that is, what we didn't mention is all this has been filled back in. We always at the end, because we want to make it an erosional problem. So when we finish digging each of these units, we fill them back in and try to preserve them for either future research there, or preserve them so they don't create an erosional blowout or something like that.
Traps for people hiking.
I mean, you also mentioned that you were making sure all the rock was cleared away. You're talking about, museum.
Yeah, that one's more problematic because it's obvious.
Like, that's what I was kind of thinking of. Is there plans to sort of keep it that way? Or let it go again, or?
In some ways, I think that would be up to, I mean, we have fencing and stuff we could put up that would be temporary. We would like to actually do some more research there sometime and see the whole thing. It would be really interesting, and maybe even 3D map it, so you can create a 3D video so people can look at, have on a display here or something. But right now, I mean, like, and how it's been, it's still an open place. There's not much harm they could do there except for take the rocks out right now, because we didn't dig anything, we just cleared off some of the bush. But it would be good to think, I mean, and we could maybe work on ways, conservation strategies with people here. But that's part of our ethic as archaeologists. We want to conserve things for the future more than just extract things.
Will the AI world, it would seem to me, will help you tie things together? You find a piece of glass, now you have to search and search and search and try to find it. And are you doing anything with how to?
So AI is of course the sort of the 300-pound gorilla in the academic world these days, and there's been a substantial investment in AI technology and personnel with the University at Albany in the past couple of years. The thing that AI does great is crunch large amounts of information to extract patterns from it. So for example, when we build up a better picture of the time range for all of the various artifacts, of which there will be thousands, right? It's a lot of information just for two professors to try to figure out, is to bring AI tools to actually see if there's chronological patterns there that are not immediately not immediately obvious for that.
But, I mean, part of the issue with that is there has to be the initial machine learning of what these things are and the time periods.
Sure.
And so all of that initial aspect would have been done, and it hasn't really been done in archaeology yet. We use comparative collection, the old school way, or we use guidebooks that were developed by different Society for Historical Archaeology has a bottle guidebooks. You can look up at all these bottles.
Yeah.
It would be great to have machine learning go in and scan all of those things in different ways.
Those
so that
tools
you
are
can,
still being worked on and invented as we speak. So
and that might be something that, I mean, Albany has really invested in AI recently, without much thought about all kinds of other things. Sounds good, let's hire a bunch of people. But it might be really interesting to try to find some students that would be willing to do that, because it would be helpful with some of this stuff.
Because AI with education is such a negative, that we hear a lot about the potential negatives.
We catch a lot.
This is this is a hell of a potential positive.
I mean, AI is a tool, and tools can be used for positive or negative, and they have reputations that are more mythological than real. In this case, I mean, everybody's afraid that like, it's going to be the Terminator or something like that. But ultimately, it's just, predicting future events based on past data sets. These are some really interesting data sets that I could see, developing AI tools for. And if we were to have a student who was interested in that sort of stuff, then we would certainly facilitate that.
Quick question. In addition to the Helm site, are there any plans for future sites that you're targeting?
potentially.
Yeah, I mean, there was actually a couple of indigenous sites that we were initially more interested in, but like, we just kind of ran out of time. So probably, the Helm site's great because it's a great, laboratory for teaching in some ways, because you can't really mess up a trash heap in a barn. So students can like learn how to dig and catalog and do all kinds of things, and it's a good way for them to do little harm to the archaeological. Indigenous sites usually a lot less dense and rich, and you have to be very careful how you dig those, because every little bit of information could potentially be more important. So that is something we have to consider in the future. I mean, it's not something that we couldn't do as part of this, but we have all kinds of other sites that we're interested in. We're really interested in this group called the Yancey that has intrigued us to know to a great extent. It's a group that nobody really knows who they are in terms of the historical record, but may have been an indigenous mixed ancestry group that lived in the Pine Bush. About 40 people with this patriarch John Yance, apparently moved here in the late 1700s and grew into a bigger population of 200 people, and apparently dug out houses into the side of some hills and were known for their basket making, and the women were known for like being like palm readers or whatever, not palm readers, but fortune tellers. Yeah. So they sort of sound like travelers and things like you would see in Ireland. And they're an interesting group that we'd like to learn more about. But I love the idea of thinking about people who are sort of living on the margins of a larger center. And that changes over time, relatively speaking. But also, it's not the best land for farming and stuff because of the nature of what this is. So it's not always the most, it's an environment where people found a path that wasn't always in the midst of BC in the light of.
We're still analyzing the artifacts, obviously, but what we've seen so far is not showing us signs of an extremely wealthy, established population. It looks like, they're buying individual plates and here and there. They're canning a lot. They're hunting. We've got deer bone and stuff like that. So it is a marginalized population. We've already mentioned they came over on the Mayflower, right? So how do you get from coming over on the Mayflower to living what seems to be kind of a precarious existence on the edge of Albany proper? It's a really
we're
compelling
kind of
story.
weird archaeologists that like the everyday sort of people
Yeah.
and the outcasts versus, like our Mesoamerican colleagues, they're always about finding the big, huge, where's the king or whatever. But what you can learn from this kind of more day-to-day kind of groups is often much more people. Oh, here's another Jane Mask. Not to diminish their work.
No.
It is. But there's such an interesting story, and there's so many sites. Part of what we want to do next, even before the next field tour, what I've been trying to convince Sean that we should do. I want to actually know what all the sites are, where they're at, and go and visit them and just.
I've been resisting this. I don't know what you're saying.
No, I feel like I mean,
I'm there for
Maybe.
it whenever.
There, right?
Yeah, but we want to know, we would like to know, like, what is the current state of where the sites are and who we think they are, and work on some bigger questions.
Thinking in terms of the historical context of a major travel route between Schenectady and Albany, there would be such an archaeological record along this pathway, coming from historians.
Yeah, and we have some connections to Schenectady. We're doing a little bit of work with Raven Farm. But it's just because of the nature of this environment, and I started out as an archaeologist interested in Paleo-India and earliest peatlands, and here we have this crisis and remnant, and in many ways that's changed and it's being transformed by people that come into it. That whole story from the beginning to up through the colonial period is just that, and I think it's worthy of attention.
There's a book in there, the archaeological history of the Pine Bush, starting with the formation of the landform in the glacial period and ending with the Yances and the Helm.
But we need a lot of input from the ecologists. We really want this to be achieved as much as possible.
One final question, does your department doesn't get hats?
No, we haven't actually.
I didn't see where my new Albany hat.
My son just started at UI.
Okay.
The flying colors, family solidarity.
I understand.
Yeah, we have some swag. I would. Sure, for sure. Yeah, and just also, you know, whatever the future holds, when we're hopefully back out there working, whenever, every site that I've ever managed, I have an open site policy. If people come by and, you know, I will talk at you endlessly about what we've got going on there. So you're obviously, you're welcome to come to Albany and see what we're doing at the lab end, and we hope to see some or all of you, this summer when we're, hopefully working out there.
Early stages.
And did you say you're doing work in Schoharie?
I have in the past, if you know where Terrace Mountain is, there's there is a site right at the foot of Terrace Mountain called the Pethick site, that has both historic, prehistoric remains on it, and in collaboration with the state archaeologist Christina Reed, she and I ran field school on that site, which is mostly a Haudenosaunee village. We ran programs there for 12 consecutive years, and COVID kind of put an end to that program. Plus, my collaborator had some health issues, and it's a bit of a hike to get, you know, students out there 45 minutes out and back. I love the site. Would love to keep working
You always
in that.
have a van that we can just pile people in.
Yeah,
Do it all.
the logistics were challenging. And, you know, we've done a lot of work there. We've got more artifacts in the museum than we could possibly analyze in our lifetime. So that's another ongoing project of many that we have going on.
Any other questions?
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Okay. The only other thing that we have, for upcoming business are other business upcoming meetings. And this is still wrong, Nancy, not the one that I have.
No, I said.
Yours is correct, the one that I have on the screen is wrong.
Oh, okay.
So our next meeting is December 19th, exactly 3 months from today. And then the next meeting in March is the 20th. And in June, the third Thursday of June falls on Juneteenth, which is a holiday, so we will either back it up or push it forward. We'll probably back it up. But I'll have that on the agenda for the next. Anything else board members would like to add?
It was a great presentation.
It'd be great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
It was incredibly interesting. Okay. Motion to adjourn. I will. John, Don. All in favor? Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Have a good ball.